Hi guys, this is Erica from Gokce Capital.
Now before I begin, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications. It is maybe only a slight exaggeration to say that the hairy hand case is the most famous case in the history of U.S. contract law. And there is a good reason for this. The case of the hairy hand not only tackles basic principles of contracts, but it is also incredibly gross. As with any good story, the case of the hairy hand begins on a stormy night. At some point during a winter gale in 1914, 2 electrical lines came down, causing a power surge in the home of the Hawkins. When the Hawkins' 10-year-old son, George, flipped on the kitchen light switch, he was then burned badly enough to create a large permanent scar on his palm. At the time, the family was advised to leave the scar as it was, but over time, George's hand began to set in a cup-like position, making it difficult for him to work. At which point, George encountered Edward McGee, a doctor who promised to make George's hand 100% perfect using a skin graft, a technique the doctor had never performed himself. Dr. McGee removed the scar tissue from George's palm and replaced it with skin from his chest. The new skin did indeed take hold, but shortly after, George's hand began to grow thick, matted hair. Thus began the case of the hairy hand, which eventually wound its way to the New Hampshire Supreme Court. But more on that later. For now, you may be wondering why I bring this case up on a real estate channel. Well, it's no secret that the United States is a litigious society, and thus it is very important that language in any contract, including real estate contracts, accurately represents what both parties pledge to do. And one way to ensure that a contract is always up to date is through the use of addendums and amendments. So in today's video, here are the top things you need to know about both of these concepts. Number 1. A contract addendum is an attachment made to an initial contract. Addendi are thus used to add terms or conditions without significantly altering what is contained in the original document. Number 2. A contract amendment allows parties to make a mutually agreed upon change to an existing contract. The original contract will remain in place, but some terms will be altered by way of the amendment. Number 3. As you may already be able to tell, there are some key differences between addendums and amendments. Primarily, there is a slight difference in purpose. At a high level, an addendum adds to the original contract while an amendment modifies it. In addition, there may be slight differences between who can draft the documents. An addendum can be drafted by any party, including a third party like a title company, whereas an amendment can only be made by one of the original signing parties. And finally, there are some slight variations in how the two documents are created. An addendum is an additional document that is added to the contract. Now, this can also be the case for an amendment, but amendments can also be made by redlining the original contract. Number 4. So if you're still a little bit confused, let's look at some concrete examples. Common addendi include adding a contingency to the contract, adding a property condition disclosure or natural hazard disclosure, adding information on an existing homeowners association, such as the CCRs, or adding a co-buyer to the contract. There are also some common examples of amendments, such as altering the sales price, pushing back the closing date, or sometimes moving it forward, incorporating new terms based on a discovered title issue, such as a requirement that a seller take care of an existing encroachment, or changing the way the property is purchased. For example, if the buyer originally decided to pay cash and then determines they would like to take out a mortgage. And finally, number 6. Perhaps the most important point here is to always make sure that contract changes are made in writing through either an addendum or an amendment. This is because verbal agreements carry far less weight than written ones in court. In addition, both parties should sign and date all addendums and amendments, and these documents should also be attached to the original contract. But let's return to the unfortunate George Hawkins. Was he able to win restitution for his hairy hand? George did sue Dr. McGee for breach of contract and was awarded $3,000 in damages. But the judge ruled that this award was excessive, and so the case went to the state Supreme Court. In the end, the case is famous because it shows how difficult it can be to litigate imprecise contracts. After all, McGee promised a perfect hand. But what does this mean exactly? One with a perfect appearance, or one that is merely functional? And how much is a hand worth anyway? In the end, George settled for $1,400, less than half of what was originally awarded. But if there's one thing you should take away from this story, it's that you should make your real estate contract as precise as possible. even if this means adding multiple addendums and amendments. Now, do you have a crazy contract story? Let us know in the comments. Did you like this video? You're going to love our Gokce Land Due Diligence program. We'll make you a land due diligence expert in just 7 days. Check it out at gokcecapital.com/glad. And while you're at our website, don't forget to explore our $1 down properties at gokcecapital.com/listings. Finally, don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. You can email, call, or text, and we will respond as soon as possible. So thank you for listening, and more to come.